All right, hi everybody. Welcome. We're in the green room, and we're going to share with you like what everyone's doing. We got some awesome guests like we do every week, and I'm going to go in reverse order. We're going to go with Larry, quick intros about where you are and what you're talking about, and then we're going to go to Ali, and we're going to go to Brian, and then we'll have the whole team, and then of course Ray Wang, and one of the co-hosts and co-founders at DisrupTV, with our awesome producer, depending where you're looking at, Elle on the other end, and then of course co-founder and co-host Vala. So. All right, so Larry, where are you calling in from? What are you talking about today, other than the beach?
I'm from Yardley, Pennsylvania, even though my TV behind me, which doubles as a green screen, looks like Block Island, Rhode Island. But, you know, what am I talking today? I don't know, but I go last, so we'll figure it out in about 40 minutes.
All right, we'll figure it out from there. That's awesome. Ali.
Hi, I'm Ali Cudby. I'm here from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm going to be talking about the awesome world of customer retention today.
Woohoo. Very, very well needed. And Brian, where's home and what are you talking about here?
Home is San Francisco Bay Area, where we are fighting some pretty gnarly fires at the moment, but getting through it. And I'm here to speak today about some of the research McKinsey Company's been conducting around the global pandemic.
Yeah, I know you've got some great stuff. I've been subscribing to the newsletters, and we're about to kick off. So let's do the honors. Here we go, Elle.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce, and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests your questions live using hashtag DisrupTV. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research, best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business, regular contributor to ZDNet, Harvard Business Review, and television business and technology news. I've been watching him on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg, all in the past week. He's a global sought-after speaker and one of the most influential futurists, in my humble opinion, on Twitter, at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar. And if you haven't followed him on Twitter, he is the #1 person to follow for CEOs, CMOs, and CIOs about what's happening around leadership, inspiration, and what's going on next in technology. So, and Vala is also an author himself. You can see him on Business TV. And of course, a keynote speaker. I keep hearing about Vala just spoke here. Vala just spoke there. And of course, in the last CIO meeting in Boston, I believe, some CIO council. So thanks for being on the show, everyone, and watching. But more importantly, it's about our guests. Who do we have first today, Vala?
You know, what I love speaking about is awesome research. And when I talk about awesome research, I often go to McKinsey. So our first guest today is Brian Gregg. He's senior partner at McKinsey and co-leader of North America marketing and sales practice. Brian serves clients in consumer-facing industries with deep experience in e-commerce, retail, consumer technology, media, and consumer packaged goods. Brian has fundamental expertise in multitude of marketing and sales discipline, including digital marketing, CRM and loyalty, customer experience, agile operating models, omni-channel strategy, and consumer-centric innovation. We're going to talk hopefully about all of that or some of that today. You can follow all the marketing and sales research from McKinsey on Twitter at McKinsey, McKinsey. Welcome, Brian, to DisrupTV.
Thanks for having me, Ray and Vala. Great to be with you.
Terrific.
You know, you guys have been doing some deep research, right? This is some of the most extensive consumer research I've seen. It's 50 plus countries. You've got, prospective studies going on about consumer behavior and what's happening. And I want you to share, help people understand the extensiveness of that research and really about some of the headwinds and some of the maybe interesting trends that are happening as a way to kind of kick off, because there's some really cool stuff. And I keep getting these newsletters every day and I'm like, wow, where's this content coming from? And I think I know where now.
Well, I appreciate the question, Ray. It has been it's been a crazy time for all of us, I'm sure. And here at McKinsey, the amount of IP that's been developed in the last 90 days is probably superseded what we did in the 3 years before then. So it has been a prolific time, to say the least. But as you mentioned, we have been doing research across 51 countries, started really in the early days of the pandemic. And what we really sought to understand is how is what's happening in our world today changing the way consumers think, behave, and their overall sentiment towards the economy. And maybe before answering your question on some of the headwinds and the headlines, it's probably important just to first acknowledge how important and how much of a humanitarian crisis this pandemic really represents. The threats to lives and livelihoods, that's nothing to be understated, and is clearly first and foremost in the minds of all of the researchers at McKinsey. But as we've conducted this research, what we tried to do is essentially take a weekly pulse, really since the pandemic began, to understand how consumers are changing their mindsets and behaviors around commerce and around the way they shop. And just to answer your questions, a couple of things we're seeing. I think first, and probably not too surprising, the epic amount of change we're seeing is at a scale and pace that really has never been seen before. I mean, the scale and pace of this thing is insane. So just to give you an example, in the last 90 days, we jumped 10 years in terms of digital penetration that consumers have behaved in, meaning the number of hours spent online, the amount of transactions online, literally 10 years and 3 months. So that kind of human behavior, that's not something that statistically you typically see. And it's really, the global pandemic has set off a whole chain reaction of shocks, really. And so you asked about headwinds. Look, I mean, right now in our research, we're finding that 40% of Americans are reporting spending less and intending to cut back on spending looking forward, particularly on non-essential items. That's a big number, right? Secondly, we're seeing, this is one of our more surprising findings, a complete shock to loyalty. And what I mean by that is upwards of 75% of consumers across countries reporting changing a brand, a retailer, a website that they usually shop for. So this amount of change and switching and new behaviors emerging is like no other period we've seen before.
And so we were seeing that in the
challenging time.
Yeah, no, we're seeing that in the stock market too, right? The companies who could deliver were actually the ones being rewarded in post-pandemic response. If you could deliver, you were being rewarded. If you were completely out of the game on a digital channel, you're dead, right? You don't even get to play. So,
totally right.
But is it exacerbating winner-takes-all markets here?
Well, what we know for sure at this point is the amount of market share up for grabs has never been seen at this level and in this short of a window. Right. When you have 75% of consumers switching, I mean, just to bring that story to life, think of the grocery sector. I mean, this is a tried and true loyal sector where your grocery store that you've gone to for years around the corner or a 3-mile radius, that's your grocery store. It's what you're tried and true. We see in our research, 20% of Americans reporting changing their grocery store over the last 90 days. It's unheard of. And so in this moment of consumer switching and new routines being cemented, yeah, there's a whole new leaderboard truly being rewritten as we speak. And so on one hand, for some brands who were the market share leaders, there's a real concern about how do I make sure to hold on to my base? But as you said, and as we've seen in the stock market, those who are able to win the consumer at the digital first screen touch point, they're able to grab market share that was never, ever available in the past.
Right. And, when I think about discretionary spend pre-COVID, essential, non-essential. The only barrier you had was relevance. Was the brand, a product, a service relevant to you? And if it was, you spend. Post-COVID, you have two additional barriers. You have safety and accessibility. There are certain organizations, movie theaters, there's no access. So regardless of safety and then others, and then, safety in terms of being able to, order online, pick curbside or contactless payments. And most of the restaurants that I've been to in the last several weeks, there's no menu. You scan the barcode, the menu shows up on your phone, and that's how you order. And then you think about, why did we hand out dirty plastic and paper menus to begin with?
We're wiped a couple of times. It's fine. Totally clean.
So the combination of relevance and safety and accessibility as three barriers in terms of discretionary spend. And in your report, we had really 5 dimensions. You talked about shift of value and essentials. You talked about flight to digital and omni-channel, which we're going to talk about some more with our last guest, shock to loyalty, which you mentioned, health and caring economy, and then homebody economy. And I want to learn a little bit more about the flight to digital and omni-channel. You said in the report, most categories, and you define categories with food, grocery, apparel, household, entertainment services, a bunch of categories, all have seen, or majority have seen more than 10% growth in their online customer base during the pandemic. But what's interesting is many of the consumers say they plan to continue to shop online even after the brick and mortar stores are reopened safely. So this behavior, this 10-year acceleration that we've seen in the last 3 weeks or 3 months or 5 months, is a permanent view into what the next normal is going to look like. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, Vala, I mean, you hit it on the head, right? We got a lot of questions in the last couple months. Is this a hiccup? Is this a blip on the radar? Or is this going to stick? And the answer is emerging. It is sticking, right? You said exactly right. We're seeing 10 to 15% of consumers sticking with their either the new brand, the new website, the new retailer that they're choosing. We're seeing the amount of digital interaction. Keep in mind, this pandemic has brought a whole new set of cohorts of adults, of Americans, of other countries who didn't always try digital. That wasn't their thing. They've had no choice now, and they're sticking with it, right? For all the reasons you described. It's safer, it's contactless, there's high hygiene, and as long as I can get it fast enough, this is a better routine. So it's getting cemented. So that behavior, the answer is emerging. It is really looking like this behavior will stick. This is the next normal that we're talking about. And companies who are able to quickly move to this new normal are the ones who are going to come out of this stronger versus those who aren't able to adjust.
Is this just like a business blind spot that all companies or most companies had, in that we didn't value the power of decentralization? There was a forcing function that said we had to work from home and engage with brands in a pure decentralized, pure digital construct since March in the US. And I just think about the companies that are struggling are the ones that really, you focused on bringing people to you, and there was really no other option to engage. And so it's like really ignoring decentralization as a superpower. And now it's become even more relevant.
Well, it's inertia is a powerful thing, Vala, right? And what you had, I think there wasn't a single company on the planet who didn't realize digital was going to be more and more important. But when you build an entire business model on the basis of a physical footprint, or to your point of the motion of bringing customers to you, it's really hard to invent the next horizon. And so what this moment has done, if nothing else, has ripped the Band-Aid off completely. I mean, this is truly the grandest human experiment ever in terms of a true clean sheet, a piece of paper put in front of companies and saying, okay, rebuild your business. Digital is first. The mobile phone is first. And how do you actually build the business model off that? Not easy to do, but this is what companies are forced to do at this point.
True.
And with the shift that's actually going on, right? We're actually thinking that, is it permanent? Is it going to continue? Do we change this? One of the things that we've actually discovered too is density as a business model is dead, right? Density, all those models, revenue per square feet, right? How many turns can you make in a restaurant, right? Those metrics are completely thrown out the door. But are we truly in a digital model? Is it going to last? Like, let's say we find a vaccine. Are we just going to throw all that out again? Or do you think this is here to stay?
All indicators, Ray, so far as this is likely to stick. And that's not just a thing to be said about one individual market. As we look at, obviously, this has been a shared global experience across many countries, unfortunately. But different countries are in different stages of the pandemic, as we know. And so being able to study each of those markets has been helpful to us in our research to see, as the ebbs and the flows happen of the virus, what you find is, while yes, there is a metering of how consumers spend their time and how much physical interaction and density, to use your words, they're willing to take, the digital is not going away. It's sticking, and that's a known thing. And so companies are going to have to rebuild their business around it, and that takes a full on battle plan. And I will say, if there's one regret I'm hearing from executives who have now sort of had a chance to really digest all this, is, wow, I wish I would have spent more time on reimagining this next normal versus having everybody's head 150% in managing the day-to-day grind of the crisis. So operating at those multiple speeds, those multiple horizons, not easy to do, but something we're encouraging our clients and our executives to really think through.
Sure.
So they're doubling down on digital.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tripling down, I hope.
Absolutely. Tripling down.
Tripling down.
And I don't want to use the right word, right? It's not everything will be done only in a digital environment, but digital first, digital led, absolutely. The idea of how does physical enable that, the idea of curbside, pick up in store, reserve online, those things are still going to happen. And there are things that human beings, as anthropology would tell us, We need to touch and feel. We need to talk. We need to see. Those things won't completely disappear, but it will be started from a digital spot.
Yeah. And you started our conversation talking about the shock to loyalty, which was illustrated in your research. I tend to localize it. So, for example, my company announced that none of our employees need to come to offices for the next year. So August 2021. So we have a year of working from home, your choice, no matter where you are, even if the offices are open safely in other geographic locations, the choice of working from home or office is up to you for the next year. And then when I think of loyalty from, like, I remember walking into a restaurant and I didn't see all the employees wearing a mask, so I walked out. So to me, I made a very quick decision, and it's one of my favorite restaurants, and I love the food. But listen, if you're not mindful of what's going on around us, I'm going to go somewhere else and maybe eat something less delicious, but I'm worried about my safety. So talk to us about the shock to loyalty. What's driving it? And give advice to business leaders, like, what do you need to do to earn the trust of your customers in this next normal?
Yeah, it's as I said, the shock to loyalty has really been one of the biggest surprises of all of this. 3 drivers of that from what we see, just to answer your question. The first really is just availability. I mean, let's face it, the first couple months of this pandemic, it was just a question, can I even get the products I need?
Right.
In some cases, there were over 3-4 months ship times to get something. So number one is availability, and that has changed where people have spent their dollar, right, based on availability. I think second driver is really this redefinition of convenience. I mean, you've all sort of touched on it, but the convenience is no longer, where can I wait in line in my favorite grocery store? Convenience now is in a socially distanced, ideally contactless world. How do I get the product I need as fast as possible? And that's changed the game. And then the final one, which we haven't spent as much time on in our conversation so far, is value. I mean, let's face it, yes. With 40% of consumers reporting they're going to reduce their spending and unclear of the next horizon of where income might come from, value is a very important element, and it's having people switch more and more to actually private label. And some of the non-branded goods are getting a bump as we see it right now based on this need for value.
Do you think value chains will also collapse, right? As industries start saying we're going to go all vertical to take control of those situations? Like, is that popping up in some of your research as well, in terms of like brands wanting to make sure that they have, the supply chain locked down for the things that they need, or that they actually start producing things, kind of like the Costco example, like we want $4.99 Costco chicken, so we're going to own a chicken farm.
Yeah. I think what's for sure, Ray, on this is that value chains will be reshaped. I think they will be highly innovated on. And the winners of the profit pools, as those innovations happen, will shift. And so I think, unfortunately, what that means, there will be some companies inside value chains that will collapse. But I think that the value, as I'm looking across all of the sectors within the economy, there's some silver linings here. Right? This is forcing some of the things that we knew had to happen, happening faster. It is creating innovation that is immediate, and rewriting the rules and the profit pools of value chains is part of what we're going to see over the next 3 to 6 months. And we're seeing executives spending a lot of time on that right now.
So, you're giving us guidance that speed to value is how you are relevant, and sustained relevance leads to trust. So brands that can quickly add value. Now, you are a practice leader for chief revenue officers, chief marketing officers. But as we talk about speed to value, knowing there's now even stronger dependency on technology, of course, culture, talent, process, all of that, in my opinion, are even stronger critical success factors. But if you're not leading into technology, you're unable to remove the friction and create that convenience that's also safe and gives you access. Do you see CIOs gaining prominence in terms of their role, since businesses now need to think about becoming more technology companies that deliver goods and service? Or do you rely on CMOs and CROs to really, as a team, determine how to best use technology to grow their businesses?
For sure, it's the latter, Vala.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an all-team, all-contact sport right now.
Yeah.
And that's actually some of the beauty of what we're seeing companies who I think will come out stronger doing. Right? They're recognizing this isn't a single hero involved. This takes a multidisciplinary approach for sure. The CRO, the CMO, the CIO working together towards a common purpose. I will say it puts an extra premium on digital talent and digital natives. And so, right. That's always been the case, but the premium just went up 10x, right? On folks who know how to navigate that world.
Yeah.
So So that's it. And the advice you asked, advice. I think one of the biggest advice is you got to take this on. It's a team sport. And what I've seen some of the best companies do is come together, use this moment to actually act at a speed and create a muscle set that didn't really exist in the past. And so the question we're starting to work with executives on is, how do you maintain that muscle and make it sustainable? Actually, part of the hardest part of this period is everybody's been working 18 hours a day on Zoom all day long, right? You know how it is. So,
I used to be 6'6" and handsome. Look at me now. It's killing me. I was never handsome. Sorry.
He's always handsome. Hey, Brian, you got a great point, right? I mean, people are coming together, right? And some of that is really the networks that you have, the networks you built over time, and you've got access to some of the smartest minds, some of the top CEOs, and who are some of your mentors? Like, who are you turning to when you jump in and say, look, I had a problem no one's ever thought about before. Like, who's on top of your list?
Well, it's a great question, right? This might sound a little bit not what you'd expect, but in some ways I take a lot of learning from where it all started. I grew up in rural Ohio. My mother was a musician. My father was an eye doctor. I had art and science in the household every day, all day.
Awesome.
Now what that meant?
He was steam before steam was hot.
That meant there was a lot of healthy tension all the time, but it taught me, it role modeled for me the importance of multidisciplinary thinking and how to make sure there's a diverse set of skill sets and people in the room. And so I would just say, as I think about this moment, it's more important than ever to make sure that the right elements of the orchestra are all playing the same song, and that's easier said than done.
Good answer.
We call that digital artisans, bring the right brain and the left brain together. Something very powerful. We are here with Brian Gregg, Senior Partner, McKinsey Company. You can follow him on Twitter at BGREGG12, and you can catch up with some very interesting things. He's a Senior Partner and the co-leader for North American Marketing and Sales Practice. And check out the blog. There's awesome stuff on the McKinsey website.
Yeah,
so thank you so much for being
Brian,
on the show.
You crushed it. Thank you so
Thanks,
much. Awesome.
Be well.
Well
Bye
done. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, stay safe and keep in touch.
Yeah.
So
they do produce
awesome
amazing
insights.
research. They really do. I one of my favorite places to go to learn about emerging trends. And our next guest is going to talk about perhaps the most important emerging trend, and that's customer experience. Ali Cudby, CEO of your iconic brand and author. Ali wrote the book on customer experience, literally. The author of the #1 best-selling book, Keep Your Customers. Is there a topic more important than that right now? Ali brings a proven methodology for successful customer loyalty and retention to clients around the globe. From Fortune 500 to pre-revenue startups, Ali has spent 20 years refining her craft. Ali teaches entrepreneurship and innovation at Purdue University and works with clients worldwide to incorporate her innovative customer loyalty and retention strategies through her company, Your Iconic Brand. You can follow Ali on Twitter at ALICUDBY. Welcome, Ali, to DisrupTV.
Thanks. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks a lot for being on the show. We had a chance to catch up pre-show, have a conversation. You were brought to us by our friend Karen, also in Indy, and have a conversation. And you mentioned something that was so important, that famous 80-20 rule, right? That 80-20 rule for sales is completely blown up. And I think it's really important to start there because I think people should understand what you mean by that. And I think that's a great prognosticator for the rest of the book and what else people are going to discover.
Yeah, great. So when I was writing Keep Your Customers, this fantastic research came out. And this idea of applying the rule of 80-20 to sales has been around for a long time. I mean, there's books written about it. And the idea is that 80% of your revenue comes from the top 20% of your customers. And as it turns out, nobody had ever actually done the academic research into this.
There's no quantitative analysis on this?
Right. Where's the McKinsey study?
Where's the McKinsey study? We'll bring Brian back in now.
Yeah, exactly. So Dan McCartney out of did this research with a few other professors, and they actually dug into it. And what they found was that, in fact, if you're looking at revenue, the top 20% of your customers deliver between like 66 and 74% of revenue. So, it ain't shabby, right? You're still getting 2/3 to 3/4 of your revenue from that top 20%, but not quite 80. So that was really interesting. But then it gets really interesting because they went one step further and looked at net income as kind of, because they were looking at a bunch of different industries and different sizes of companies. So they used net income as this sort of stand-in for profitability. And what they found was the top 20% of customers were actually delivering between 105 and 113% of net income. Right?
Whoa.
Wow. That is super interesting.
It's mind-boggling. And so what you realize once you get your head around that is, well, holy Moses, how many customers are being served unprofitably at an actual loss if the top 20% is delivering over 100% of net income?
So the CACs are ridiculous.
Right.
Customer acquisition costs, and then servicing really bad customers. I mean, how much more pain can you add to my? Oh, it's gonna go ahead.
Right. No, let's spend a lot of time, energy, and money servicing people that are actually losing money for the company, and that's what companies do over and over and over again, which is fascinating.
Woohoo! Customer loyalty for the wrong customers. Right, great.
So I mean, as former chief customer officer and CMO before I joined Salesforce, I mean, you always want to make sure the marriage experience is better than the courtship experience. So you want to have the same level of interest and value creation, after you gain the trust and respect and business of your clients. And you have an interesting way of segmenting customers for long-term retention. Can you talk a little bit about, what's a healthy model in terms of long-term retention and your segmentation strategy?
Yeah. So what you want to start thinking about, if this top 20% is delivering so much of your profitability, is how can you really make sure that you know who they are and service them appropriately? But what my research has found is that even within that top 20%, there are real differences. So there's the what I call the lazy loyals, right? They're the people that they keep buying from you, and they're profitable. They stick around for a long time, but really only at their convenience. They're total convenience customers. And so the second they have a better offer, they're going to be out of there. So they're great while they last, but you don't want to over-rotate on that group and be thinking about them in terms of marketing or even product development, because they're only going to stick around for as long as it's good for them. Then there's that middle section, which are the limited loyals, and they like you. It's sort of like going to a hotel where you have rewards points. Like, you may not really care, Marriott versus Hilton, but you're probably more loyal to one versus the other because you get points and you have status in one. And if they change their status structure, or if you lose status, well, then you really don't care anymore. And so you have an opportunity to elevate them in terms of their level of loyalty. But for the most part, they're going to be with you, and you have that opportunity, but they're not super bought into their relationship with you. So those are the limited loyals. And then you have the lucrative loyals. And these are the customers who genuinely feel connected. They enjoy being your customer. And those are the ones that you want to really know who they are and understand them, so that you can create those marketing messages that are going to be extra resonant for that segment, so that you can get more of them.
And how do you identify these three categories? Is it propensity to buy, deal size? They engage in your events, they speak for you, they're willing to connect with press and media and analysts? Like, what are they certain markers that tells you this is a limited versus lucrative?
Yeah. So there's three factors that you look at. One is financial contribution. And I say financial contribution versus revenue because sometimes you can have a smaller customer who actually ends up being a more loyal long-term customer and worth more to your company in the long term. So you don't want to just look at revenue, because then also you can end up looking at customers who seem great. You caught the whale, but you either end up overextending yourself to serve them, and they demand so much that even though they're, bringing in a lot of revenue, you end up actually serving them at a loss, or it's not that great a deal for your company in the end. And I've seen that with a lot of my customers before they brought me on is that, they'll end up doing too much to save a big revenue number when in fact it's not even that great a deal for the company. So financial contribution is the first one. Then you want to look at referral, and you want to have a way to know who's referring to you, because that is a real elevator of a company's financial contribution, right? If somebody is, if you're getting referrals from a customer, then they're worth more to you than somebody who's not referring.
Right.
So you want to be able to track that.
Those are great points, right? I mean, you're basically saying customers are trading loyalty for value, loyalty for convenience, loyalty for status. And any one of these things that you shake up could actually change the way customers look at loyalty. Because if you mess up one of those equations around profitability, and why bother, right? You're wasting your time. You should be go chasing after more of those, the folks that love you, right?
Right.
I mean, that's really what matters. And that's a very different game than a lot of people are playing. So when you think about that, like, how do you treat customers unequally then? Like, is this a calculation? Is there a formula to get there?
Yeah. So you actually do treat customers unequally. You should know your VIPs, and you should give them better treatment. You should give them more upgrades, but you got to know who they are in order to be able to do it. And so a lot of companies, look, they know what's going on at the SKU level, but they don't necessarily know what's going on at the customer level with that same amount of granularity. And so that's what you need to be able to do. And so I actually walk my clients through a calculation that takes into account.
There is a formula.
Yeah, there's a formula.
There's always a formula.
There's always a formula. And so it's the direct revenue and the indirect. So you are actually looking at what is their actual financial contribution, and then looking at that referral and engagement, those other two pieces, in order to capture the full picture of what a customer looks like. And I think it's really interesting in the first segment with Brian, that idea of relationships and loyalty didn't come up as an opportunity. And that's what I'm seeing, is that the companies that are building loyalty are retaining their customers better, but so few companies do. Like you said, they do a great job getting you in the door, but then once you've signed up, then that sort of experience falls by the wayside a lot of the time.
That's a great point. That don't view this as a threat vector, view it as an opportunity, because people are, again, with the barriers that have been introduced since the pandemic, with safety and accessibility on top of relevance, means that there's an opportunity for you to really double down on creating a loyal relationship. But I think that the measurement of loyalty, like when we talk about Net Promoter Score as an example, for years I've been thinking about, the question is intent for advocacy. Would you recommend my company based on quality of product or service? And we're smart enough, and we have enough technology to shift that question from intent for advocacy to actual advocacy, where the question should be, have you recommended my company to whom, and did it result in incremental revenue? So do companies need to graduate from, the annual surveys or biannual versus, for example, capturing social networking and messaging unstructured data that speaks to sentiment and tone of your customers and prospects, to understand signals for advocacy where you can potentially engage in a meaningful way and really use that word of mouth power of marketing to expand your brand affinity? What are your thoughts about the maturity level of companies using the right set of algorithms and metrics to really understand the power of engagement and advocacy?
I would say that most still don't, and that this is an early stage opportunity for companies to dig in and make a difference. The thing about Net Promoter Score that's so interesting to me is everybody uses it, and yet it doesn't differentiate at all between the value of the customer to you. You capture the data, you treat everybody the same. And I see a lot of companies, they'll get negative feedback, they'll get a bad Net Promoter Score. Well, if that's from somebody, or even from a cohort of customers that aren't serving your needs as a company, then I see so many times when people say, oh my God, we're getting negative scores, we got to do something about that. Instead of questioning, is this a group of customers that you want to do something for? And it takes a lot of maturity as a company to say, these are customers that we're okay to let them go. We're okay to serve well, the idea isn't that some customers get a bad experience.
It sounds so hard. We're going to fire a customer.
No, but Ray, if you remember, we had Jason Lumpkin, who's a very successful VC, and he said his advice to startup founders was find the advocates and double down on them. The detractors, he pretty much said forget about them. Just put your energy on your promoters and maybe some energy for the folks in the middle that could quickly become advocates. So, and he's a super successful VC. So anyway, it is hard to do.
It's absolutely hard to do. And I don't think it's as much about, I don't know that it's as much about fire them. And it depends on the company and the model, right? It depends on how many customers you're actually serving. Right. But certainly in terms of not getting out of whack on those customers that aren't serving your company, and making sure that you're really focusing your energy and your effort on those customers that move the needle for you. And anytime you get confused, you just go back to that 105 to 113% of your profitability, net income, whatever, is being driven by that top 10%. It brings things into focus.
That should be on a poster hanging on a wall. Yeah.
Right. Every time you walk into assuming we go back into offices, every time you walk into the office, you got to, kiss it.
So we've got a way to segment which ones are our best customers, and now you're doubling down, trying to figure out how to actually make them happy. And would you run out of those great customers, or how do you start cultivating them? Is there a way to activate them? Is like a movement that you activate to get them even more excited behind it?
What I find is that the more companies know who those great customers are, the more they can cultivate more great customers. And with that clarity of messaging and really knowing who they are, who those customers are, they can find more and more and more. I've yet to see a company that runs out. And then a lot of the work that gets done is actually the work of making sure that the company is aligned so that they're delivering that experience consistently and clearly. And so, that sort of becomes this virtuous cycle of customer generation and customer loyalty generation.
This is my last question. This seismic event that's impacted all of us since beginning of the year. And as you're advising CEOs and big companies, startups, have you changed the order in terms of what you're advising them based on the pandemic? Are there certain initiatives that have risen to the top, or is your thesis and formula really independent of going from centralized to distributed digital world and types of products and services, or the new technologies that are emerging like contactless payments and e-commerce and augmented virtual reality and so on and so forth. What has changed in terms of how you guide business leaders as a result of the pandemic?
So I would say that a lot of companies, they really do want to focus on new customer acquisition. And so that's where their energy lies a lot of the time. And now realizing that it's so much harder to get the attention of a potential new customer, there are a lot of companies that are more open to this conversation about retention than sometimes they are. And so you can sort of start to share with them. And one of the things that I'm starting to see is that they're more focused on, how do you get that alignment inside your organization so that you can serve customers at the higher level. And so I would say that the thing that I'm seeing working even more effectively right now is getting CEOs to buy into the importance of internal alignment in order to get those external results.
Absolutely. Is this a myth, by the way, that the cost of a new customer is 10x versus keeping one? I heard that for many years. Is that true, or is that another?
We're doing myth busting today here on DisrupTV.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many statistics out there. A lot of them, weirdly fall into that 80-20 bucket. It's interesting because if this whole 80-20 rule in terms of sales is blown up, then how many of these others are blown up? I use a lot of them too. So we need McKinsey to get back in here and do a little bit more research, I guess.
Absolutely.
No, that's awesome.
That.
Hey, so you got into this work from a very non-traditional path. And so one we don't hear often. I was hunting for your books on Amazon, and there's some other interesting stuff. So share with us how you got here and where some of these insights have come from.
Sure. So I started my career in strategic marketing and did a lot of this work in corporate America. And then I took a very unique left turn and ended up becoming one of the world's foremost experts on the art and science of how a bra should fit a woman's body. And I run a bra fit training and certification program for lingerie professionals, which makes me super popular at cocktail parties when we have them. And because that's not the standard answer. But what ended up happening was my clients would be really great at bra fitting. And then I would say to them, they'd say, oh my gosh, Allie, my customers are crying tears of joy in the fitting room. They are so thrilled with the fittings that they're getting. And I would say, that's great. Now, what are you going to do to make sure that you keep these customers for the long term? And they never had a plan. And it was fascinating the extent to which they never had a plan. They just thought that if they gave customers a good in-store experience, that would naturally lead to good long-term customer revenue. And it doesn't work that way. You have to remind customers that they've had a good experience. You have to do that work to cultivate the relationship. And so that's sort of where all of this came together. And being an expert on bra fitting also became this company here.
Awesome. What a
This is
great
tremendous.
story.
Fascinating insights, breaking sales myths, trying to figure out how to keep your customers, looking at loyalty different and segmentation. You can follow Allie Cudby, CEO of Your Iconic Brand and author of Keep Your Customers. So check it out on Amazon. Definitely out there. Definitely a book to read. And thank you so much for calling in today and being on the show.
Thank you, Allie.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
You're terrific. Wow, that was awesome. So important. I mean, again, marriage experience better than courtship. That's what we got to do. And we have now our final guest, who at one point was a world-leading authority on pajamas, but we'll talk about that later. We have Larry Dignan, editor-in-chief of ZDNet, and editorial director of ZDNet sister site Tech Republic. He was most recently executive editor of news and blogs at ZDNet, my favorite blogging site in the world. Larry's covered technology since 1995. He's one of our favorite guests. You can follow. He's a must-follow on Twitter because every day he's posting incredible articles about transformation and the next normal. You can follow Larry on Twitter at LDIGNAN. Welcome back, Larry, to DisrupTV.
Good to be here. Did we plan on all this customer centricity kind of thing? Like, this is all interconnected. It's very...
We started with the importance of omnichannel. We're going to go right to that question next, I believe. Yeah,
just went from McKinsey to customers to me ranting about retail. It's like pretty wacky.
We love when you rant about retail, right? Let's go there, right? I mean, the post-pandemic winners, Target, Walmart, Home Depot, and Lowe's. I mean, these are some crazy numbers. Where it's coming from? Like, tell us a little bit of what are the insights here. So
yeah, so
and I'm glad you have power, given I heard about the power outage.
Well, yeah, power is good too. So all those big retailers reported earnings basically in the last 2 days or so. And it was kind of fascinating listening to the conference calls and checking out the transcripts because there were like certain unique threads. Now let's get real. All those companies, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's, all did well, partially because they were deemed essential, right? So other retailers weren't essential, and some of those are now dead. So they took that ball, which was a nice ball to be handed to them, and really just those digital bets just really paid off, whether it's curbside pickup, buy online, pick up in store. Target and Walmart were kind of ahead of the curve. Home Depot was, different animal, and they had their one Home Depot sort of mission, which, a lot of it revolved around supply chain and stuff like that. And then Lowe's is sort of like a newcomer. If you followed the Home Depot Lowe's battle forever, basically the way it works is Home Depot has a store here. Lowe's goes, here's a mile and a half away. I'm putting a store here. And they
The
basically
classic McDonald's Burger King model. Hey, why not?
pretty much, and they cultivate different. Like I'll go to Lowe's when I don't know what I'm doing, and I'll go to Home Depot when I know what I'm doing. Which means I'm usually at Lowe's most of the time. I've just worked my way up to unhandy. But they've all taken sort of that digital model and run with it. So it's it's contactless payments. It's things like definitely the shop online, pick up in store has turned out to be huge. And just everything from curbside pickup where it's sort of, and it works out great for the retailer too because they don't have to deal with shipping, right? So
that's a good point too. And back to Brian's point, people aren't even returning too, because once you get it, it's like there's like only one of these left, and everyone's like, "Fine, I'll take it."
Right, and it's and then you toss in a little human touch, like a human actually hands you the bag at curbside pickup. Maybe that matters. But just there's basically an omni-channel kind of playbook emerging, which is buy online, pick up in store. Delivery services, although, if I'm these retailers, I have delivery services, but I'd prefer you come pick it up as opposed to deliver it. And just the whole digital experience flow between, what's the app, the website to, actually going in the store. And it's kind of fascinating to watch. And, you're seeing this, like I interviewed the Joann Fabric CIO earlier this week too for video. And they're doing, basically the same sort of model, but they're all adding their own unique spins to it. And for Joann Fabric, it was all about, they were a big PPE play because they sell a bunch of fabric, and they're crafts people, or I guess you call them people that do crafts for it's a species I don't understand, but they made a bunch of masks. They did a lot of PPE, and they wound up using their stores as fulfillment centers in a lot of ways. And it
should be like Joann Fabrics to Etsy value chain delivery,
right
on a subscription basis.
So you see this happening at different retailers, but the big four were the ones I mentioned that reported earnings, and I think Walmart was the laggard. These guys were posting like 25% same store growth, and it was insane. Like you're just watching it, you're like, wow. So you really have this barbell of, all the other retailers that are basically struggling to even hang on. And then you got these just absolute powerhouses that, so I guess the takeaway here is that, they kind of are owning the customer through multiple channels. And, they have those people that will give them good word of mouth, and they're repeat customers. So I don't know if that's 80-20. But my guess is like, I will walk in a Target. I try to avoid Walmart. I will order online from Walmart. It's just sort of, but they're acquiring new customers too through these channels, and then how they nurture them through the pipeline is going to be fascinating to watch. And like was said earlier, I think some of these things are just going to stick, like especially buy online, pick up in store, curbside pickup. I think is going to last. For sure. I think what we're all coming around to realizing is you're going to have a generation that just doesn't want to deal with people.
It's true.
Where's that robot?
Just
let's get the robot.
The two interesting points in your latest article about this. One was that one experience multi-channel, and it was I don't know which one of the store executives, but they said the reason being good at delivering across multiple channel matters is because the customer is in charge. So you have to deliver a good experience across multiple channels. And the other one was supply chain improvements, like Home Depot planned to hire 1,000 IT professionals to build that one Home Depot strategy. So they're really doubling down on technology to introduce convenience and build that brand loyalty, as our last guest talked about.
Yeah, and for somebody like Home Depot, it really is all about supply chain, right? They are shipping big things. They're delivering big stuff. And what's interesting there is, last quarter and the second quarter on the earnings call, the CEO was just talking about how they flipped, like one of their middle distribution centers into being like a core one. And then they'll flip it back once the demand surge is over. So even the distribution, like what was they basically would ladder these distribution centers. Even how they're doing that's changing based on the surge. The other interesting point from all that is the Black Friday and the holiday shopping season it is all being modeled and planned off what happened in April and May.
Right.
Because that was the peak surge.
Right.
So
Those peaks are crazy. Try getting a refrigerator. No one can get a refrigerator. If your refrigerator dies.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I've been through instances of friends and family saying we can't get a fridge.
Right. And that's, and that's part of a broader theme where e-commerce is really figuring out the big stuff. Yeah. So, look at Wayfair, absolutely killing it on furniture delivery. There's a bunch of trends that add to that, but, they get you the goods. Carvana, another one. Yeah. Zillow, right? Yeah. Zillow's buying houses and basically flipping them to you. It's all data driven, but e-commerce is getting into the bigger things where before it was, you remember those debates we had, like would people buy shoes online? Like now you're buying couches online, right? So,
and a car.
Yeah.
And a car. You can even test drive the puppy.
You can place the couch. You can place the couch in your living room, exact right size. The use of augmented reality with the furniture stores is and even the videos of homes now. Realtors are giving you inside the house a neighborhood experience. So it's more than just beautiful photos. You can actually see this. So
one gotcha with the furniture stuff is if you have to return it, that hurts. Yeah. It's expensive. It's not an easy return charge there. So that's the other thing. It's not free returns. So
right. So Larry, one industry that maybe not adapting as quickly to retail is education. What's going on in the education sector?
In the last 2 weeks,
you wrote about that as well, by the way.
Yeah, the last 2-3 weeks, I've probably spent 12 hours on school board meetings. Locally, it's on YouTube, just watching it, / screaming at the TV or whatever. So there's two buckets here. One's the K through 12, which is frankly an absolute struggle, right? They don't have the money to do this. They don't have the people. They play around with hybrid versus virtual. And some of them are trying the hybrid model, which is sort of a split between virtual and in person, like you'd be in person, say Monday, Wednesday, and online the rest. But it is the biggest training exercise ever, right? Because I'm an adjunct, right? So we had to move like content to digital, which I was probably 80% digital anyway. But you had to move it over, right? Exams. Proctorio, which is this thing that kind of watches your webcam to see if you're cheating or not, which is kind of fascinating in itself. But there's a real, just getting Chromebooks to kids. Like,
that was so hard.
Serious supply issue right now. You got to train teachers on Canvas, which, I don't know if you guys use Canvas or not, but it's basically like the Epic or SAP of education. It works, but you don't like it. It's kind of
you don't like it.
So
I'm hearing that.
You wrote that 76% of respondents to a survey, parents, are making purchases specifically related to online education. So you're seeing shortages. You're seeing uncertainty in terms of what equipment do they need to replicate the classroom and home. It's just parents are struggling, right?
It's a huge economic issue, right? Because you were planning on your kids to go to school so you could work. And just retrofitting your house, like say you have 2 kids and they're both in remote school and you're doing remote work, that's a lot of Zooms on the Wi-Fi. Right? So
nothing would break. Don't you really have the Wi-Fi speed they promised you? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Depends on where you are. I have colleagues that have Spectrum and they're just ready to just jump like it's bad. Which is the former Cablevision, I think. But yeah, some providers are better than others. But just figuring out your Wi-Fi network, it's just a real strain right now, and education's kind of being reinvented as we go. Yeah. And I don't know what it's going to look like. My high school just said they're not going back they're not trying a hybrid plan until like January 29th. Which don't ask me what's going to happen January 29th.
So strictly online.
Yeah.
Wow, the New York schools are opening, which is interesting. So
they're going
to watch all these.
They're going to try, right? I think they all try, and then, but my part where I live, it's kind of like the numbers are pretty good. So my thing is try now because it ain't going to work later. So
yeah, you don't want to be the next UNC or
you need to be in their advisory committee for this.
I mean, honestly, you mean to tell me you think flu season and COVID season at the same time is going to be a good thing, right?
I thought we eliminated the flu with COVID. No,
well, yeah. We'll see how that goes.
He says,
but yeah, so it's a real challenge, and then universities, they're just as challenged. The university challenge is really about financials, where K through 12, I think it's more about logistics, funding. Let's face it, most universities, their core competency is building buildings after founders. Or funders
and sports teams and sports management,
and alumni and sports management if you go to a big school. But so they've kind of gotten away from that core. They're basically real estate investment trust, right? Here's a building, we collect rent, we charge you tuition for this experience, and then there's a huge pushback. Like, you're just not going to want to be online. So I think higher ed's going to be totally disaggregated. So it's going to be platforms like Chegg, Coursera. I'm not sure how it's shaking out.
Google is getting into the space apparently too.
Right. And I think you're going to mix and match your degrees. Like, I think it's I think community colleges are going to boom. Because, people are going to really start looking at the ROI here. And it's hard to justify if it's just all online.
Right.
Well, we're gonna do rapid fire speed, answers. We got a couple more things. Facebook portal. What's going on there?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually think Facebook portal might be an addition to the home office.
Wow.
I've panned that thing. I don't even like Facebook. I get workplace by Facebook. I get it. I just don't. It drives me nuts. But having a thing where you can do a video conference and the camera follows you around, and I don't know about you, I'm tired of sitting down doing Zooms. I'd rather walk around the room and do a Zoom.
Yeah.
And I think the thing they announced this week with the native integration with the WebEx and Zoom and all those guys, I think it's going to become a home office purchase, and they're not expensive. So I think I'm actually going to have to give it a whirl. It'll be my
yesterday alone, I was on Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Hangout, and On24 platform in one day.
Right.
I'm like, where's the share button? They're all different. They're all,
and by the way, that's Google Meet. And you were probably on it by accident because they've embedded that every place they can on G Suite. Like, I can't believe Slack is like doing Teams. Like, the bundling here is really Meet and G Suite. You cannot avoid Google Meet in G Suite anymore.
No.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're running out of time, but why would Larry want TikTok from Oracle? What's going on there?
I mean,
that's the last question.
I know Larry's Trump's boy. I get it, but it's just I hope it happens, right? I mean, I thought Microsoft and TikTok.
Lots of ZDNet articles about that.
To see Larry Ellison doing a TikTok or even pretending he knows what the hell TikTok is worth its weight in gold. So, please, Larry, buy TikTok. I just want to see this unfold. Now, all that said, watch it become like 50% of Oracle's valuation. It'll run on Oracle Cloud, right? I can almost see
OCI, next gen 2 cloud infrastructure.
It's all optimized for the database. It's all autonomous. What's not to love? You'll live forever on TikTok. I mean, Larry's living forever anyway. So I just want to see it happen. I mean, it's totally nuts, but maybe it'll happen. I don't know.
We are live with Larry Dignan, editor-in-chief at ZDNet, one of the top minds in the business. You can follow him at LDIGNAN. Never a dull moment, always insightful, and thank you so much.
Why do the conversations with Larry seem like 1 minute? Like, we could spend an hour talking to you.
Well, I got to go do a TikTok now, so.
All right.
Maybe I'll buy it.
Thank you so much. He's my favorite guest. He's one of my favorite, literally maybe my favorite guest. All right. God, that hour went by literally in 5 minutes. 3 exceptional guests. Brian, Allie, Larry, you were all awesome. Okay, this was episode 203. We've interviewed 622 guests on Disrupt. Next week is, who's counting? Next week is episode 204. We have Sandeep Dalani, Chief Digital Officer at Mars. We have Sarah Alk, partner at Bain Company and co-author of Doing Agile Right. And we have, again, first ballot Hall of Fame, absolutely one of my favorite guests, John Reed, co-founder of Diginomica. So episode 204 is going to be as amazing as any episode we've had this year. Ray, closing remarks.
I can't believe the summer's over. Where did it go? I mean, this is one of the weirdest years ever. This shared reality experience is, I hope people are recovering. I really hope people are feeling better. It's just the chaos doesn't end. Every 100-year thing has happened. Like, we've got wildfires going on now. Like, I'm like, stop. There's no earthquakes. I'm fine. Like, we can stop now and we'll be okay.
We had 10,000 lightning strikes in California in the last 3 days.
It was so beautiful. And then there's like, oh crap, it's dry out here.
300 some odd wildfires, but yeah, it's beautiful. So next week is our last episode of August. You're right. August this whole year is, it's incredible.
This is it. Well, hey, everybody, thank you for listening. This is Disrupt TV, and 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, every Friday where it's possible. You'll catch Vala and myself giving out insight, advice, but more importantly, hearing from our guests who really know what they're doing, and more importantly, sharing their thoughts, their experiences, and of course, sharing it with you. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being on the show. See you next week.